In the 19th century, England was thriving in global trade. Silks, spices, and treasures poured in from across its colonies. But with these riches came something far more dangerous, a deadly virus that turned the dead into zombies. Before anyone realized what was happening, the infection had spread like wildfire. The dead didn't rest. They rose, driven by a primal hunger for human flesh. In a desperate attempt to contain the chaos, the government constructed the Grand Barrier, a towering 100-foot wall surrounding London. To make escape even harder for the infected, a massive trench called the Royal Canal was dug around the wall. Between the wall and the canal lay a no-man's land known as the In-Between. When zombies breached a bridge during the Second Battle of Kent and wiped out the local villagers, the king, broken and fearful, ordered the destruction of all bridges, except one. As a result, nobles began leaving London and moved into fortified estates of their own. This is where our tale truly begins, with a man named Colonel Darcy. Darcy travelled to a lavish estate in Hertfordshire after hearing rumours about someone being bitten. Upon arrival, guards escorted him through a tunnel and presented him to a priest who examined him to ensure he hadn't been infected. Once cleared, he entered the home where Mrs. Featherstone insisted no zombies had ever made it inside. Darcy didn't argue, he simply joined her card game, casually opened a vial of carrion flies, and released them into the room. The flies, trained to detect rotting flesh, buzzed briefly before landing on a guest. Calm and swift, Darcy shattered his glass, drove it into the man's face, and swiftly decapitated him. Panic filled the room, but Darcy simply asked if the man might have infected anyone else. Featherstone denied it, but her daughter, unable to stay silent, rushed upstairs. She was too late. The man's niece had turned and was already attacking the staff. And now her. Elsewhere, Mr. Bennett trained his 5 daughters in every deadly form of self-defense, martial arts, weaponry, and combat. Anything to keep them alive. But their mother had other priorities. She wanted them married, not fighting zombies. When news of an upcoming dance arrived, she convinced Mr. Bennett to let the girls attend, hoping for suitable matches. The sisters dressed in their finest gowns, yet each one hid weapons beneath their skirts, just in case. At the dance, Jane caught the eye of the charming Mr. Bingley. They hit it off instantly, dancing and laughing. Meanwhile, Darcy refused to dance, commenting that Elizabeth was tolerable, but not handsome enough. Elizabeth heard him, humiliated, and left the ballroom. Outside, she stumbled upon Featherstone, now a zombie. The undead woman tried to speak, but Darcy appeared and shot her in the head without hesitation. The gunshot triggered chaos. Alarms rang out. Zombies were attacking. While guests fled in panic, the Bennett sisters stood tall. Blades drawn, they cut down every zombie with fierce precision. Elizabeth's fearless moves caught Darcy's eye. He couldn't help but admire her strength. Later, Jane received an invitation to have tea with Bingley. Mrs. Bennett insisted she ride on horseback, hoping the weather would force her to stay the night. Unfortunately, the rain did come, and Jane was ambushed by a zombie on the road. Her musket misfired, injuring her hand, but she fought back with a knife, slicing off its hands and legs before stomping its head. As she caught her breath, she saw something chilling. A zombie mother holding an infected baby, slowly approaching. The next day, Elizabeth visited Bingley's estate to check on Jane, who was sick with a fever. Darcy, ever suspicious, released his carrion flies again. But they didn't react to Jane. Elizabeth calmly caught the flies in her fist and crushed them before handing them back to Darcy with a smirk. Later, during a tense dinner, Jane refused to play cards with Bingley's guests and instead chose to read. This sparked a heated debate about what truly defines a woman. Darcy couldn't tell whether he admired Elizabeth's boldness or found it infuriating. That night, Elizabeth secretly watched Darcy train in the courtyard. The next morning, the rest of the Bennett family came to bring the girls home. Bingley wished they could stay, but Darcy, ever cautious, reminded him of the infection risks. He and Elizabeth argued again. She revealed she had watched him train, and he admitted he knew. Tension crackled between them. To lift everyone's spirits, Mrs. Bennett convinced Bingley to host a ball. On their way home, the Bennets noticed something alarming. The local orphanage had been overrun. Zombie orphans now wandered through the woods. Soon after, Mr. Bennett introduced his family to cousin Collins, the man who would inherit the estate. Collins, pompous and full of himself, bragged about his patroness, Lady Catherine, who fought in the zombie wars. He first set his sights on Jane, but when told she was already involved with Bingley, he turned his attention to Elizabeth. During a trip to visit his future in-laws, the sisters encountered a collapsed carriage and a woman screaming for help. But she was no victim, she was a zombie. The sisters drew their weapons. Jane kicked her down a hill, ending the threat. Elizabeth, burdened with all their weapons, struggled, while Collins offered no help. When they arrived in town, they saw fresh military forces, including a new officer, Lieutenant Wickham. He and Elizabeth hit it off instantly. Darcy, seeing them together, looked away and left without a word. Wickham revealed that he and Darcy had history, a family dispute involving money. At the ball, Jane and Bingley enjoyed their evening, but Elizabeth was caught between Wickham and the ever-present Collins. Things took a dark turn when she and Bingley heard strange noises. They found a servant being attacked in the cellar. Elizabeth grabbed an axe, took down the zombie, and discovered something terrifying: dozens of zombie orphans hiding below. One child claimed someone had shown them the way in. Darcy appeared and launched into action, slicing through the undead with lethal skill. One even ended up roasted in the oven. When he suspected Bingley might have been bitten, Elizabeth assured him otherwise. "You're a fine warrior," she said, "but a terrible friend." The next day, Jane received a crushing letter. Bingley was moving back to London, and planned to court Darcy's sister instead. Over lunch, Collins proposed to Elizabeth, insisting she'd have to give up her weapons and stop fighting. She refused, stormed outside, and trained furiously. Her father supported her decision, her mother did not. Seeking solitude, Elizabeth wandered into the woods. There, she spotted 4 strange men in top hats. Wickham appeared, but when she turned back, the men were gone. He invited her to a church. Inside, a priest preached to a congregation of zombies. They weren't violent. Instead, they were fed pig brains to keep their hunger in check. Wickham believed this was the key. If zombies didn't consume human flesh, they wouldn't turn fully. He saw a future where peace might be possible. Elizabeth agreed and suggested they take the idea to the crown. But Wickham revealed the kingdom was broke. There was no one left to help. Later, Elizabeth visited her friend, who had become engaged to Collins. She agreed to be her chaperone and traveled to Collins' estate. There, she saw paintings of Lady Catherine slaying Lucifer, and a more disturbing image, the 4 horsemen of the zombie apocalypse. They were the same men she'd seen in the woods. To her shock, Darcy was there too. Lady Catherine was his aunt. Wickham arrived as well, hoping to gain support for his idea. But Catherine laughed it off. Zombies, she said, would never follow a leader. Unless, of course, that leader was the Antichrist. And so, as tensions rise, alliances shift, and the undead grow stronger, Elizabeth finds herself torn